I need any reminding of how sexy YouTube is.
Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back to the Check Engine Podcast. It's the only podcast produced by 3 winners of IMSA's Spirit of the Race Award and the only podcast hitching a ride on the back of Marilla Racing's AMG GT4. I've got the usual gang of characters here. Andrew and Tristan are both in my line of sight. What's going on, guys?
Yo, that was weird. You're watching us.
Well, yeah.
I thought you meant how you came in with a yo.
Oh, I'm always weird, though. That's all right.
I think it started to rain outside quite heavily.
Well, that's okay because we're inside recording a podcast.
Luckily,
so.
I have a house.
Oh,
in which we are safe from the weather.
I'm just trying to point out that we're in the moment. I got nothing. Let's move it on.
Wow. Caught him speechless.
Probably the only time we'll catch Andrew speechless.
Move on.
Fine, we'll do. We are not a professional podcast.
Clearly.
Clearly. We do not work for any car companies or race teams or race entities. We do not write for magazines or websites. We are just 3 guys who love to talk about cars and related topics, and we like to talk about them with you, the listener. So please go find us at checkenginepodcast.com. That is our home base, if you will. From there, you can get to anchor.fm, which is our main streamer, I guess you can call it, for our podcasts. It has links to all of our social media sites as well, so you can starting there is a good starting point, good jumping off point for you if you want to dig deep into Check Engine Podcastdom. Tonight on this episode, well, we really couldn't think of an idea for an episode that would take a full 60 minutes, so we kind of decided to mix this up, and we're doing like 3 mini episodes in one. Is basically how it's teed up.
Yeah, it's a format we decided to call Show and Tell, where everybody brings something for the class, and then there will be kind of a little bit of us kind of presenting an idea, and then hopefully some discussion after that. Just totally 3 separate unrelated topics, but it's show and tell time, class.
All about cars, yeah.
Show
It's
and
the
tell.
only uniting theme.
Exactly. It's got to be automotive related. Before we start showing and or telling, do we need to get into any sort of pace laps?
I did see one neat car that, looking back on it, I haven't actually ever seen in the wild. It's a BMW i8.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
And I know it's actually going away, or have they stopped making it already?
Yeah, I believe they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say this, even on a rural back road, it really looked incredibly elegant on the road.
It's a really good looking car.
It's odd to me. It looks good in motion. It looks weird when it's sitting still. We have one that we have one that arrives at my place of work quite often. And it looks weird when it's parked. Literally, as soon as he puts it in gear and it's moving a mile an hour, it's fine. Looks great.
Yeah.
But parked, it looks weird.
I could see that, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's the neatest thing I've seen. Anybody else?
I saw a street race clearly happening. A street race.
Nice.
Between a man on a 600cc GSXR.
Oh, yeah, shock, yeah.
And a man in a Lamborghini.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I have a commute that's a really long way, and I catch things like this occasionally. They're not usually that neat, though.
Who do you think won?
It was coming out of a corner, so the Lamborghini was eating the GSXR alive coming out of the corner, but then the bike took off. I think it'll come down to not how fast they can go, but how fast they will go.
Yeah, or who dies first.
Right, or who's dead first.
Yep.
Maybe that comes down to how fast you will go. Maybe you'll just give it up and die first. But that was remarkable. I was driving home, tootling along in commuter mode, not at all doing anything exciting. and I hear like some kind of large insect behind me, buzzing quite loudly, and at speed got passed by the bike, and then just when I thought it was all over and said, "Oh, look, it's just some idiot on a bike," 1 second after that, I get blown by this Lambo.
Yeah.
It was an Aventador.
Sure.
And just, I was like, whoa, I'm probably gonna pass these guys in another couple minutes, and they'll both be on fire. That was the assumption I was making. I did not see them again since. It was the classic Gixxer race paint scheme, the blue and the white.
Of course.
And it was like someone picked the default things in a video game, because it was also the orange and black Aventador.
That's funny.
So no one had any originality, but they had a lot of speed going on. And in and out of traffic, and yeah, it was
so bad.
It was pretty
don't
awful.
Do that shit.
Yeah, PSA, don't, don't.
Much like
They have tracks. They have track days
Right,
now. You can
you
go to a
might-
drag strip. You can go to a road course. They have track days if you really want to test your skills. Don't do it on a public road.
I'm cool with having a reckless disregard for your own life. That's fine.
Just don't take me with
and
you.
on the bike.
Yeah, exactly.
And on the bike, that is almost all it is.
Oh, for sure.
You're going to be hard pressed to really do too much damage to anybody else on the bike.
Yeah.
But that Lambo, even though it's carbon fiber, it's light, whatever. You hit somebody at 130 miles an hour, you're going to mess them up.
Oh, big time.
And that's a big deal. But much like the on fire A6 and various other things we've seen, just because it's neat and we saw it doesn't mean it's anything we endorse.
Yes.
And in fact, it was something I was moderately terrified of. I toot along in commute mode, but I toot along quickly. I'm not used to being passed like I'm standing still on I-94. That usually doesn't happen, and
Right.
It was very surprising.
That's a pretty sweet story. A Lambo and a
That's
Gixxer.
interesting.
Wow.
Yep.
I would have thought, obviously Subaru WRX would have been my guess if you'd given for the car.
Yeah.
It would have been
Yep.
my guess.
One real quick little mini news update. Trying to do the math in my head as I'm speaking here of when this is actually going to be released. So when this is going to be released, I
Next week.
believe the race will be ended by then, but we are getting close to the 24 Hours Le Mans here coming up. Biggest endurance race in the world. It's cool because it's right on the heels of Indianapolis, because I always get a little downer, the week after Indianapolis, because it's like, oh man, I got to wait 51 more weeks for that again. But then I go, oh, but wait, Le Mans coming up in a couple weeks. So Le Mans coming. I, for one, will be loading up on frozen pizza and Red Bull, and will be hunkering down in my place of residence and watching as much of the 24 hours as they broadcast. I will stay up all night, and if I cannot find a way to stream or watch for a couple hours, then I will nap. But if I can watch all 24, I will watch all 24.
Nice.
Yes, it's a disease. Yes, I'm okay with it.
It's okay. It's okay. We know. We understand.
So,
visiting family, or I would be
for
doing
those
the
of
same.
you who, well, again, by the time this airs, it'll be over. But so it doesn't matter if I tell you what channel it's going to be on.
Hope you watched.
I hope you watched on Velocity.
Nice.
So, anything else? Or are we going to pop into this little show and tell?
Yeah, let's see what we get.
Can
Nick, what did you do on your summer vacation?
All right, so my show and tell involves my Trailblazer. That's been my daily driver now for gotta be at least 5, probably over 6 years, I would have to say. I've had it for quite a bit before I moved to Michigan. The entire time I was in Michigan, moving back here now.
I guess I thought it was longer than that.
Yeah, because it was definitely before you moved to Michigan. Because we made the often legend, the trip to Indianapolis.
Oh yeah,
to put in resumes.
The resume trip in Indianapolis was in the Trail McBlazer. Also, my co-host Tristan here, in a moment where we just happened to be thinking about McDonald's, dubbed the truck the Trail McBlazer. And it's a name that's stuck ever since.
It has.
It
really has.
The old T McB.
And that's, it doesn't...
It has nothing to do with anything.
At all.
Nope. It's really stupid, but it's just stuck. The old like my parents call it that now. Like,
nice.
Yeah, it's...
Way to make it stick.
It's caught on. This car has made the famous 3 a.m. run to Indianapolis, the Indianapolis day trip to drop off resumes with race teams. We have taken it on road trips to Canada, to Virginia, to Ohio. I have driven it countless other places. It's getting to that time where I think I need to. It's not urgent by any means, but it's a somber feeling knowing that I think it's coming to its end. My relationship with the trail.
Listen, man, you got the job here. Different job. Got your own living space. You got to get the car to go with it. It's just natural.
I know I'm going to be in a funk for a while when I do part with the Trail McBlazer. I'm going to miss it a lot.
I understand. I was in so much of a funk when I got my Subaru, and I was gonna, replace the Jeep with it that I didn't. I still have the Jeep.
I thought you were gonna say when you lost the 4Runner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was to accident though. I was upset. I chose to give up the Jeep and then couldn't. Yeah. So I get it.
Right. So, and the reason I'm saying I'm ready to part ways with it is because it's almost like being upside down and like alone. Like I've put more into it at this point in money and man hours, both. Well, a lot of it would be my dad as well. Like the two of us, I put more into it than I'm going to be able to get out of it.
Of course.
Whether it's a private sale or I use it on a trade. So. It's just basically it's lost its value to me. Now that does not mean if you're in the market, folks, for a nice starter vehicle, maybe you've got
hit them up
a son or daughter who's just getting their license, looking for something kind of cheap to get them through high school.
Maybe send me an email.
Maybe Nick at checkenginepodcast.com because you've been in the vehicle runs. Fun.
It does.
Oh, perfect.
It runs great. We're very strict with the maintenance on it. We've got new brakes, new tires. They're always rotated. Change the oil when we're supposed to, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
the dailies. Power steering fluid, transmission fluid. We did have to put... we had a slight leak in the airline. One of the airlines that was causing like a lean bank that we had to get taken care of. We had a new fan belt, a new serpentine belt, a new fan clutch. And then we did brakes, and then I was dumb one time, and I knocked the bumper off in a parking lot. So the front bumper is not original,
as one does.
But besides that, Mrs. Lincoln, how'd you enjoy the play?
Yeah.
Besides all that, it runs great. So if you're in the market,
and it's a really cool color. I don't know what the name of the color is on.
The silver color is really badass.
Yeah, it's like a very low flex silver, but almost with like a light bluish hue. I don't know. Yeah, it's a great color.
Thank you. It's a great, again, I love this. I love the vehicle. But, so now the question becomes, what am I going to get to replace the old T McB?
Mm-hmm.
My first thought is, well, I'll just get a newer one because I like the Trailblazers so much. But, problem is they stopped making Trailblazers in 2009. So I would go from an 07 Trailblazer with 150,000 miles to an 09 Trailblazer with 144,000 miles.
Yeah,
and it's not going to be that much of an improvement. So I'm thinking, okay, I do need some sort of small SUV or small. I need some towing capacity. My dad has a boat, which I may tow from time to time. I have
your own cart, man.
I've got a go-kart with a trailer, so I need to tow a 5x8 enclosed. So I need I can't just get a car. I need a vehicle like that. So I started looking around at other SUVs, and there are exactly 0 SUVs on the market today that really impress me that much.
It's kind of a sad state of affairs, I will agree.
They're all just kind of bulbous, high-riding, jelly bean-looking things. There's no really unique styling aspect. You can just take the badge off one, throw it on another, and you wouldn't tell the difference.
Strongly agree.
So my next thought is, okay, well, what about not like a big Silverado or, F-250, like big diesel dually type pickup trucks, but the smaller pickups. When my dad and I were down in Florida this past February, we rented a Chevy Colorado, and I think I mentioned that on the Swipe podcast how much I loved the way the Colorado was.
All three of us love that little truck. I mean, Just seeing it and
the styling
and
then
in it at the races and stuff.
Yeah,
it's a very desirable vehicle.
So right, so that's obviously going to be on my short list.
For more of our thoughts on that vehicle, see episode 5, Swipe Match Drive.
Yeah.
Good job. Good plug.
Is that a number one contender? Are you ranking right now, or just?
I'm not ranking. I'm putting out the contenders, and what I've done is I've narrowed it down to 2.
Wow.
So I've got the Chevy Colorado, and the other one is the Nissan Frontier.
Okay. Do they still make that new? I'll
they
admit,
do
I
make
don't
that.
know.
They make that new.
Yep.
They still make it new. They eliminated the Xterra, but they still do the Titan and the Frontier.
Gotcha.
And Nissan, you remember the uproar that came about when they discontinued the Xterra. Like
Yes.
Nissan has a very loyal, almost cult-like following for their 4x4s.
Great wailing.
Which tells me that they make a pretty good product. And I've mentioned before on this podcast that outside of Chevrolet and GM, I'm a big fan of what Nissan does.
Right.
So naturally, that's going to be something I take a look at. So here's the dilemma, though. So I have Chevy. I come from a GM household. It's what I know. It's what I'm comfortable with. But just because I've done it before doesn't mean I have to keep doing it. So here's Nissan, which is a brand that I'm also a fan of, but I've never actually owned. I'm a fan kind of from the outside in. And everything I like about Nissan, and Andrew, I think you and I talked about this at an auto show once, except for the interior. Right?
Yeah.
Like Nissan interiors look like play school parts bin.
They have the same issue as Subaru does.
Yep.
It's not that they're badly built. That's far from what it is.
The vehicle itself is not
or
badly
even
built.
the interior.
Or even the interior. It's just that they lack
any inspiration.
Yeah, they're not as out there as Hyundai. They seem to have a similar build quality to Hyundai, new Hyundai, so it's fine, but it just doesn't look refined like a Toyota does or a Ford did like 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's a lot of shiny plastic, gray or black cloth seats. Nothing. I own a Subaru. I love sitting in it. It's a comfortable place, a great place to work from. It is not an aesthetically pleasing place. It's uninspired.
Right.
It's not as soul crushing. In a previous life,
strong word.
in a previous life, all the way back in college, I took a crack at this myself. This whole automotive journalism thing for a computer class. I wrote a car blog. Andrew, you might even remember that.
I don't.
And I
must have done a great job.
I had like 3 or 4, reviews of cars, and one of the ones that I reviewed was the Hyundai Accent of the time, 2009 or 10. Oh my lord!
Woof.
You can't even describe the
No,
interior.
you
in that
cannot,
car.
and it is not that. Nissans do not do that, but they're not.
They're not all that great either. So, and if it's something that I'm going to be driving in every day, is that something I'm going to want to look at every day? So I've got the old standby in General Motors, and I've got the I guess you can call it a contender because I've never actually owned one before in the Nissan Frontier. And the intrigue of getting something new is pulling me in that direction just as strong as sticking with what I know is. So it is a toss-up for me right now. So what we're going to do is the first poll we did on the show was for the Video Game Hall of Fame.
Yes.
I believe Mario Kart was the winner, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
Stick a knife in my heart.
Okay.
Wow. Wow.
That's not how I thought that was going to go.
Well, we must have a thing going.
But we had good success with the video game poll. So
Sorry, that made me laugh.
So we're gonna do poll number 2.
Yeah.
And it is going to be, which truck should Nick buy? And we're going to leave this up to the audience. Now, we're not going to worry about trims. We're not going to worry about like Z71 Colorado versus Pro 4X.
Sure.
It's just going to be very simple. Chevy Colorado, Nissan Frontier. Let's put the poll up. We'll run it for 2 weeks, a month, or whatever it is. Whatever gets the most votes in this allotted time period will be the vehicle that I go buy.
Can we have an other category for dicks like me who want to try to throw wrenches in the plan?
Yeah.
Because there's new stuff coming out. That's the thing.
Yeah, see, here. We can have the other, but be warned, I'm not going to pay attention to it.
Clearly.
So,
But I mean, my question for you, obviously, you'd probably...
we'll do it. Yeah, put it right in.
You'd probably get disowned if you bought a Ford or something.
No.
Because, I mean, The new Ranger's coming back out. We got the new Bronco incoming. I know you said you cooled on the SUVs because they all look the same.
Bronco
that does not look
the same as the Bronco. I don't know what the price point on a Bronco is either. So that's the.
I mean, you never know.
That's the thing.
It's an unknown
because it hasn't come out yet.
Yeah,
we don't know. I meant the Ranger is going to be right in the range of the Colorado and the Frontier and the Tacoma. Sure. It's going to be right in there because it's
related to that actually. The new Honda Ridgeline is getting nothing but great reviews. Did you look at? We looked at the auto show.
We did.
Yeah,
that's a little bit bigger truck though, isn't it? That's more. That's more Silverado size.
It might actually be.
It's pretty small. I drove one.
Maybe it just looks bigger because of the waist design on the outside.
It's got a high belt line, so it looks big. But they got rid of some of the more off the wall styling from the first generation Ridgeline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But kept a lot of the odd utility, the weird swinging tailgates and the in-bed compartments and all that stuff. And I've read a few articles that, nothing but amazing things are talking about how I never expected this from a unibody truck, things like that. So that would have, you beat me to my suggestion. Having owned a 4Runner, I'm always going to say, have you looked at the Tacoma? Because that's the default small truck for a bunch of people. So I wasn't even going to bother, but I was going to bring up the Ridgeline as a potential dark horse as my suggestion.
Write it in as another, I guess. Yep. If you guys want to vote. So I'm going to leave it up to the audience.
Sure.
And so that way, if I don't like it, it's not my fault.
Yeah. I mean, my personal opinion would be the Colorado, simply because that truck actually has a little bit of my heart, even though it's a GM product, so maybe it's a death trap. And
it
even
might
though
also
it's
take a little of your soul.
Yeah, and even though it's a small truck, which I would never buy because there's no conceivable way I'd use it unless I become a drywaller.
That's true.
But that would be my vote. I think that's the one to get because not only do you keep the bloodline strong, but
bring honor to your family.
I mean, it is great and it looks good and it's useful and all that. I think it's the right one.
Yeah, one of my favorite motors is in that car. Is in that truck. The V6 from the V6 Camaro is the V6 option in that truck.
That truck.
Yeah, it was. I test drove one and I was this close. I almost bought one myself. So that's my suggestion too.
So these guys both say Colorado.
Yeah.
We are only 2 votes.
But yeah, there are only 2 votes, or they could write in the Ridgeline or something else completely just to fuck with the poll. So
yeah,
just because they're
all write-ins for different vehicles, every other vehicle on the market.
Just because I work with assholes, these guys might do something to completely throw it off. But shortly after this episode comes up, look for the poll. Do your research if you want to, or just pick on the fly, throw a dart. But make your choice: Chevy Colorado, Nissan Frontier, or be an asshole and write in something else. And whoever wins, whatever choice wins, will be the vehicle I pursue for a purchase.
I love it.
Putting your future in the hands of the public. Luckily, we discussed this earlier. Luckily, we're not making you, our adoring fans, choose a name. Because otherwise, we'd definitely end up with Trucky McTruckface.
Yes,
that's right. We could put another poll up, or just have you write in. You know what? In the comments or direct messages on our socials,
I'll fill out. I'll
send us potential names.
If you
have a name for my new truck, remember the first one was Trail McBlazer, and it had nothing to do with anything.
But that was organic.
Yeah, that happened in the moment. I'll put up the form as a 2-field form. We'll get a multiple choice with another section for what you want the vehicle to be, and then we'll have a fill-in-the-blank comment section.
Beautiful.
We'll look through the names, and we will then post a subsequent poll with the best that we found and figure out what the names are.
There you go. So it is in your hands, listeners.
It's daring. I just love this idea. It's great.
I couldn't do it. Braver man than I.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't.
You only live once, man.
That's awesome.
So who's next?
I'll go next. We can really change things up, and we'll go with mine. For my show and tell, I bring you 2 dead bodies and 1 guy in critical condition.
Wow, that got dark real fast.
Yeah, that just took a turn.
It did. So here's something.
Or in some cases, it didn't take a turn.
Oh my God! Why are you making a joke? Can we stop and hold him?
Yeah,
I think
can we please stop and hold him?
I'm going to stop and hold myself if I remember.
All right,
which
Tristan
one's
has
me.
officially been awarded a stop and hold plus how many?
Plus 5, I think.
5 minutes?
No, plus 2.
All right, stop and hold plus 2. Is your mic off? Okay.
Plus infinity.
All right. So Tristan's out. Go, Andrew. What do you got?
Here's what I got. Last weekend, well, I shouldn't say that. We don't know when this is going to come out. The first weekend in June, there were 2 notable events in the motorcycle community.
Yes.
The first is a motorcycle race. The second is a highly publicized blood sport. I'm talking, of course, about the Moto America Championship at Road America in the Isle of Man TT. The Isle of Man TT might be one of the most famous races in the world, specifically because
it kills a lot of people.
It's killed a lot of people. And it's 2018, and it's still killing people. So what I want to do is lay out a tale of 2 races. First one is the Isle of Man, a street course on, well, the Isle of Man in the UK.
Go figure.
Very tight. They race through towns. It's extremely unsafe.
Real quick, Tristan, how you doing over there? You still quiet? Still no hearing from Tristan. Okay, go. Continue.
And, yeah, I mean, really, the mystique of this race is that people died, and people still die, and that's it. That's the whole package. So, while the actual race was early this week, I think maybe Tuesday, the qualifying claimed 2 lives. The first was a man named Dan Kneen or Dan Kneen. He's probably Kneen. He died in a collision during practice. Not even a race. While race officials were going to his accident, a man named Steve Mercer, who was riding the course, ran into a support vehicle. He's in critical condition and getting worse. Then, let's see what day this was. During a race, a motorcyclist named Adam Lyon died from head injuries. And, I mean, here's the thing. This race took place, qualifying and stuff, took place over the first weekend of June, and the race took place the first full week. That same weekend at Road America, the track we all know and love, they did a Moto America Championship Series. So they raced, their 2 main classes of bikes, 600cc and leader bikes. 2 deaths at the Isle of Man TT. No deaths at Road America.
Not even any notable injuries.
Not even any. That's the thing. A rider in a tightly contested race in the leader bike class, very tightly contested. I think the race finished maybe even into hundredths of seconds.
The last lap was insanity. It was
we did share that on our
we did share it on the social.
Right, we did. That rider crashed out in one of the last corners. He popped up 2 seconds later because he didn't die. He didn't hit a tree. He didn't hit a brick wall. He didn't get run over.
He went into a sand trap.
Because he was on a racetrack. And that's exactly where I'm going with this. I think I've brought this up in several other public forums on Jalopnik and stuff like that, saying that 2 young men died in a motorcycle race in 2018. Maybe let's take a look at this. And there's just a horde of people say, no, they made their choice. It's free this, it's free that. Sure. Freedom of choice. That is what it is. But what really, and this is such a weird place to take this argument, but what really is the point of racing? Is it speed at any cost? No. It's speed inside a very tightly set restriction boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
faster than your competitors.
Yeah, faster than your competitors, not fast enough
to kill yourself.
Exactly. And while there is a body that manages the Isle of Man TT, they do a shit job. You know how I know? 2 people died this year, and it might be 3. If I have a very
and this is not the first time,
right? There were a lot in 2009. I think it was 5.
Yeah.
So here's my point. I think we should start thinking about this a different way. If someone dies at your race weekend, you had a bad race weekend. You need to change something.
Right.
It just can't sit by. And there's such resistance to the idea of changing the Isle of Man TT because it's somehow sacred. And people who ride motorcycles, a lot of them, have this appreciation for these people because, they kind of worship them because, they do this and they could die. Okay, whatever. But if there's such resistance to changing, then it's done. If it can't change, if it can't be safe, it's over. Because anything else where you're publicizing the sport specifically because of its risks, specifically because of the body count, it is definitively a blood sport. And you can't do that anywhere else. Why do it here?
Right. I get the idea of the legend of the circuit or of the event itself and why people want to do it. It's why people want to name any big motorsport event.
Mm-hmm.
Pikes Peak Hill Climb, the Goodwood, Le Mans, Indianapolis. It's because of what it is. And yes, it is their choice to run it, but it is also the organizer's responsibility to keep those people safe.
Absolutely. From themselves.
From themselves, because they're not going to know, because they want... Yes, exactly.
Cirque du Sarth, dude. That back straight.
4 miles long, the Mulsanne Straight. They put 2 chicanes in it for safety reasons to slow the cars down.
Yeah, because they didn't want people dying.
Because they don't want people dying.
Yeah, and you had various Le Mans prototypes really deciding they identified as an airplane.
Yeah.
And that's not okay, because they're not designed to be airplanes.
It's real bad.
And here's the thing with motorsports. Like, obviously, manufacturers of things, manufacturers of the cars, of the tires, of the safety equipment, they're always looking to improve.
Mm-hmm.
They're always looking to make things lighter, safer, perform better. I'm sure whoever manufactures the bikes that these guys and girls are riding at the Isle of Man, are going to their providers and saying, this is the bike we're putting together. Do you have a tire that can hold up to these kinds of... they're all going through... But
they're the big 3 bikes. They're Yamahas, Kawasaki, Suzuki.
So from all the manufacturers, that stuff has always been in motion. I think, unfortunately, race organizers, track owners, promoters, series, they have been a lot more reactionary.
Mm-hmm.
Just over the course of history, they've been a lot more reactionary. They need to wait for something bad to happen before they really get forced into a change. Dale Earnhardt dies at Daytona, hitting a concrete wall. Biggest name in all of American motorsports.
Oh, yeah.
Now, NASCAR, IndyCar will not race at an oval track unless they have safer barriers installed all the way around. The foam and energy reduction that goes before the concrete now to save lives.
Yep.
You look at some of the accidents that happened in Indianapolis.
And that, by the
Indianapolis was dangerous for a while. Indianapolis killed a lot of people back in the day.
Just to go back to, there was one death in NASCAR, one major death, and they changed the way they ran every race in their series. One death.
And not just their series. Every series, IndyCar followed suit.
Yeah.
And I go back, we've mentioned him a couple times on podcasts, Hinchcliffe's wreck at Indianapolis. When the suspension piece broke, it didn't just break. He hit it was the highest recorded impact in the history of motorsports. Oof. It was in triple digits in G-forces, his initial impact.
God.
And the suspension piece went through the car and impaled his legs. If that would have been concrete, he'd have died.
Yeah, for sure.
Instantly.
For sure.
He just ran the doubleheader in Detroit this past weekend. He's been racing. He sat out all of the rest of 2015, but this is his third full season back in the sport. The only organizers that seem to not give a shit are the people who organize Isle of Man.
That's kind of what kills me about this. That is such bad taste.
Man, if you weren't presenting this, that'd be a penalty too.
But no, I mean this does really affect me because we're talking about guys here, 26, 30, and 32. I think is the guy who's still in critical condition. Sorry, I can't find his age at the time here, but they're young guys who did this race, yes, because of its mystique, yes, because of its intrigue, yes, because of its storied history, but they mostly ran this race because they really wanted to race a motorcycle. Not one of those guys was like, yes, I'm gonna die on this bitch. No one's thinking that.
Yeah, and when you look at another sport similar, when you talk about like people know they can die, but they're not there to die. I mean, when it's always first one that springs to my mind is always F1.
Yeah.
I mean that can be a pretty dangerous sport. At least it has in the past. The one that springs to mind for me is the 1994 at Imola, where
they lost two in a weekend.
Two in 2 days. The Ratzenberger and
Ratzenberger and
Senna.
Ayrton Senna. The Dale Earnhardt at the time of Formula One.
And those two deaths shocked F1 into changing a bunch of safety standards.
Yeah.
But again, they never went out to say, I plan to die. Now, you'll often see people in the 60s to the 90s say, like, I could die. I know I could die. It's the job. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Niki Lauda was famous for that. Mm-hmm. After he went up in flames, it was like, hey, I could have died out there, but that's the job. It's a job hazard, but not the reason that they go. It's not meant to be a blood sport.
Sure. Here's a stat. So they had two people die in 2 days that weekend. You know how many have died since in 24 years?
How many?
1.
Really?
1.
Wow.
And that was a freak thing. Jules Bianchi in Japan. It was raining, and he was still on slicks. He hadn't made it to the pits. One other car had gone off, and there was a cherry picker going to pick that car up, and he slid off and actually went underneath. So he wouldn't have if that cherry picker hadn't been there tending to another car. It was a freak thing. It doesn't matter. He's still gone. But it wasn't because of the safety features of the racetrack or of the race cars that they're in. Essentially, Formula One as a sanctioning body has a completely clean slate since Ayrton Senna's
Basically,
death.
they're like, we don't want people to die anymore. And that doesn't take away from
the spectacle of the sport.
And the iconic nature of things like Monaco, Monza,
even Imola.
Yeah.
But I know it's extreme to call the Isle of Man TT Bloodsport, but I'm sorry, I have to, because they're already, from the ground up, from the fans up, taking these deaths and adding it to some kind of mythical roster of people who gave their life in some crucible of motorsport. But I'm sorry, these deaths were completely unnecessary and in a very impactful way, a very shameful way, meaningless. These guys didn't have to die, because if they were racing at Road America on the same bikes on the same weekend, they would have been perfectly safe like every other racer at Road America on that weekend. It's pitiful.
Yeah. Racetrack exists for a reason. We talk about Road America a lot. They moved Road America to a racetrack because racing in towns is dangerous.
And they adapted the Road America track to be safer for motorcycle riders. And guess what? It's better racing. It's a better weekend. And no one dies. I mean, it really bothers me because it's so unnecessary. But next year on the Isle of Man, they're going to do the same shit. Maybe no one's going to die that year. That's their big accomplishment for this race weekend. If everything goes okay at this weekend, nobody dies. How low is that bar? What year is it?
The lowest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. Either change it so it's safe or shut it down.
Or pitch it. Yep.
That's it.
Period. Paragraph in the story.
That's what I brought.
Yep. Swinging back around.
Anyway.
Away from that.
Give us some levity.
If not necessarily levity, it's at least an excellent thought experiment. Or at least a thing to investigate.
Here comes Tristan with his deep thinking again.
We kind of looked at Nick's potential car future. I'm going to be looking at the past. The question that has occurred to me, anybody who's kind of piecing the pieces together from the podcast hasn't, like we did pointed out at one point, but my father has come into possession of a new to him car. It is a 1990s Mercedes SL, something that has been on his bedroom wall.
So he actually has it.
It's here.
I didn't realize that.
You
haven't seen it yet?
No,
yeah,
I don't.
It's
think
actually
I really
here,
read what you said.
right now.
Well, what are we doing?
But right, what are we doing? Let's go look at it.
We'll be back in a couple minutes.
But
leave the mics on.
But something that he's had very few poster class cars in his life, and this is one of them.
Are we talking about like the Firm SL? One in The Firm? The one Tom Cruise?
Probably.
In the movie The Firm?
1996. 4 to 6.
Probably.
Yeah. Yep. So
I haven't seen The Firm, so I don't know.
Yeah. Probably. I don't know.
I try to stay away from Tom Cruise movies.
Have to enlighten myself.
Don't high road Tom Cruise. This is
unless it's Days of Thunder.
Okay, look. All right, continue.
So they are in a sweet spot right now where they're 90s cars, which are generally looked upon with a lot of derision.
Which I don't get, but
for a lot of people, 90s was a dark point in interior design, exterior design, paint colors.
So in car design,
everything
in general.
But my question is, having had the chance to drive this is a nice car.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it still is. It's probably over north of 100,000 miles on it. It's from the early to mid 90s, but it's a nice car. It drives really well. It is comfortable. It is smooth as butter. That straight six in there is magnificent. And yeah, you got some quirks from 90s technology, kind of in that weird gap before things really started to pay attention to digital.
Yeah.
But then you've got a lot of stuff that seems relatively new. You've got like this car was one of the first ones where people would bring people out of a restaurant or out of their home to show them the automatic roof going up and down. It had the roll bars that popped up in some immensely small fraction of a second when the car rolled over.
Really?
Yeah. So they are down by default, and then this roll bar springs up. It's on a giant spring-loaded thing where they just kind of pull the pins out.
Yeah.
And it comes shooting up. If it detects too much of a difference between the suspension travel on one side of the car, once the suspension reaches full extension, which would mean the car is upside down. It will deploy. It also means if you manage to get all four wheels off the ground upright, it will also go off. However, irrelevant.
So don't go over Flugplatz on the Nürburgring.
There is a button to avoid this behavior. You can put the roll bar up preventively.
Oh, so it's not just like a one-time thing.
Right.
It's actually...
Yep, so it's not like explosive
it's like a
or
replaceable
anything.
roll bar.
Yeah, so what happens, it's basically, it's on giant heavy springs, and it'll basically pull the pin on these springs, and then when there's like some weird cooldown time so that it's not allowed to detract it while you still are on your head.
Right.
So it has like cool down of like an hour or something until you can put it back down again. But it's a reusable pop-up roll bar.
Wow.
All sorts of crazy technology, but the steering is impeccable. It's communicative. It's weighted just right. It's got a magnificent engine. It does have that was in the heyday of automatic transmissions, kind of C4 Corvettes too, where it was like, hey, we're going to put an automatic transmission in this because that's the height of luxury. Who wants to roll their own, So the number of these that came...
So fancy.
Yeah, the number of manual transmissions that came over were very, very small. So it is an automatic, and it's a mid-90s automatic that they were trying to get good power transfer out of. So it's a lock-up automatic transmission, so it can be clunky if you're not careful, but it's to make a certain point. It's not just because it's a bad transmission, it's because they were trying to achieve something with it. The seats are comfortable, the ride is astonishing, the interior, although it has been around for a while, is one really good cleaning and restoration from being pristine.
Yeah.
And it looks great. It's got some 90s sensibility, a lot of square gauges and stuff, but it looks great. So my question is, I kind of wrote this off. I was like, well, this is the old man's dream car. It's kind of weird, right? I want one.
Wow.
I would absolutely own one. So the question I'm posing, long story to get to the question I'm posing is, do good cars ever just become crappy old cars, or do they turn into classics? And obviously this is with the caveat of they have to be taken care of. They can't go into disrepair and things like that. But as a group, do good old cars turn into classics, or do they just get old and crappy?
That's a super complex question.
It is.
There's a lot that goes into that.
I'm going to counter with this. Let's consider the DeLorean. The DeLorean is objectively a piece of shit. At the time
Yes.
it was built,
It was a piece of
it was
shit.
a piece of shit.
Exactly.
A good, not even mint, a good condition one of those is one of the most prized cars in existence. So, was that a good car? Is it I mean, it has to be considered at least a highly collectible car now, but is that the counter case to what you're asking, or is that an example of a car that was good, quote unquote, because it was made famous?
I think it's that one, or potentially a third option, which is cars that develop a cult following, whether they're good or not.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, I'll allow. I think we can just call that
Pontiac Fiero.
Yes. Yes.
People love those things. They were objectively not all that great.
They're garbage.
Yeah, but people love them, and they turn them into kit cars and all sorts of other stuff because they develop a cult following. Nick has his hand in the air.
He's got some.
Yes, Nicholas?
When I was doing field sales in Michigan,
Oh boy.
across the street from one of my largest accounts was a Fiero museum.
Whew.
What?
Yep.
Did
Sanford.
you ever go?
No, because it was always closed.
It also never worked.
Sanford, Michigan. There's a Fiero museum.
You realize now that you've said this on the cast, we have to go.
We have to go there as a group.
Oh, we're
have to
going to go. Oh, we'll go.
All right.
We'll go and see my buddy Adam at the account across the street,
Look
too.
for that, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but do you have a... I'm trying to think of a second example of a car that was of good quality during the same time and now has... Is there a cult following for this? I mean, there are people who love SLs. I know that for sure.
I think the one that I brought to mind is those early to mid 90s M3s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still have a rabid following.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
I think for a lot of people, though, that's a cheap track day car, too.
Yeah.
Like, if you just want to get into some form of grassroots motorsports, it's a very good performing car that, because it's a mid-90s, the value isn't shooting up like a classic car would.
Mm-hmm.
So it's relatively, comparatively speaking, inexpensive to get your hands on and, make track ready. I think your dad's car, now when he took me out to the garage to show me his new purchase, which unfortunately was at your big cookout and left you alone manning 3 grills. Sorry about that.
I was worried. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to not burn everything.
He was telling me that it's kind of right in that, I think you mentioned it too, like right in that sweet spot where it's a really good car, but it's still a 20-year-old 90s car, so it's like a $80,000 car new that still runs beautifully, as you can attest to, that he got for under 10?
Under 5.
Under 5? Like,
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
bargain.
Yeah.
Bargain of the century.
And the wonder, and because it's always a sliding scale. So when you look at the SLs in the previous decades before that, 80s, 70s, 60s, they have become classics.
Well, they've become more than that. A lot of those, at least one per decade, is considered to a large group of auto enthusiasts iconic.
Yeah,
throughout each of those decades.
Yeah, and so is that something unique to the SL, or is that something that various car segments have cars throughout history that take that spot, and it just so happens that in the kind of grand touring spot, the SL tends to do that? For example, Nick, one of your dream cars, the GTO.
Yes.
Compared to today's cars, nothing from that vintage is great. It can't be. You know, now, from a strictly numbers standpoint. But you can always look at what do the interiors look like? What does the exterior design look like?
Mm-hmm.
How does it make you feel when you drive it? What kind of characteristics does it have that really turn it into a classic? Because a classic, I think, is different from, a good car.
Well, sure.
I think classics can
comparatively speaking, no cars from the 50s and 60s are as good as the cars we have today.
Right.
But
so, and
you're not going to find a $1 million Mustang Cobra from 2015.
Right.
You're gonna find a rare one, especially if it belonged to like Carroll Shelby or something from the 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
It I don't know. A car is worth a car is worth what people are. This sounds really weird, but I think it's really true. The car is worth what people are willing to pay, and a car is as good as the owner thinks it is.
True. True.
If your car is a pile of shit, and you think it's the best car ever, more power to you. Love the hell out of that car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And I think I'm talking more society level than individual, because obviously beauty is always going to be in the eye of the beholder, and you're going to buy a car that moves you and you enjoy.
Hopefully.
But there are consensus cars that take them or leave them. Whether you would actually buy one, people will say, "Oh yeah, that's a classic car."
I'm trying to think of a car.
The Beetle?
The M3 I think is a really close comparison.
Especially time frame wise.
But it's hard to name that as the car to compare it against, because one notable thing about both of those cars is they both have storied lineages at the time, in the 90s.
Yep.
And they're both European.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of something here at home that we can use as a comparison.
Right. Bear in mind the question is, given they were a good car.
Exactly.
So you have to say objectively how many cars coming out of Asia or the Americas, taken even within their context of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, were great cars. And I think you can look at things like, for example, some of the Nissans, the Fairladies.
I was going to say Toyota Corolla.
Things like that.
It sounds ridiculous, but
but you can see that compared to today's cars, they're going to be heavy. They're not going to be comparatively underpowered, but that doesn't take away from it being a really great car.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can look at things like that. And older American cars are my blind spot. I don't have a lot of information there personally. So I'd be curious, listeners, if you have anything like that, where it's like, yeah, this car in the 80s, I think some of them might consider like some of the, Trans Ams, things like that, where it's like...
I was going to say that, but those cars were
Cutlass Supreme.
But that car was awful in the 90s. And that's what I was going to say.
Right.
All of those American cars that you would name had at least a decade of garbage.
Right, and it's not something that they have to be consistently good. It can be one generation, and that can turn it into a classic.
But that's the thing, though.
Yeah.
The SL and the M3 both are, for better or for worse, you can argue facelift things all you want. Throughout all of those decades, each of those cars has an iconic model. They have something that's deeply ingrained in car culture, and I don't know if there's anything like that in American motoring. Or maybe it's because...
I think there's a gap.
Or maybe it's because that's what's home, and so the SL and the M3 are always going to look more desirable by comparison.
Yeah.
Because
exotic.
Is it a familiarity breeds contempt situation, or was there actually a black hole between the 70s and the 2000s in American car manufacturing?
It's both.
Because there are some things that you can look at and say they have turned into a classic car, when even at the time they were relatively pedestrian as far as American cars go. Like, when you go back far enough.
What about, on that point, relatively pedestrian at the time because they were everywhere? Now we can't wait for the manufacturer to bring it back. The Bronco?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And has turned into, again, or the Ford Ranger. Yeah. Those things, people will never give those up because we always relate the two because they're going to be on the same platform coming up.
For sure you're going to say Mustang, by the way. And this would be like, Mustang too.
But no,
it's full of surprises.
That's
man.
A great point. I mean, it was relatively ubiquitous. It was Ford's response to the Blazer and the International Scout.
Yep.
And at the time, people just bought it, not thinking this is going to be a classic someday.
True, but would the Bronco be a classic without a centering focus in what may very well still be the most publicized murder trial of all time in the world? Would we even give a shit about the Bronco?
Maybe, because people buy them for what they do.
Yeah, it was a decent vehicle.
Yeah, but
for what it did.
Come on, you can't tell me that the first thing you think of when you think of a Bronco is not the OJ case.
It's not anymore, because I've watched like a bazillion seasons of Longmire, so that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. But no, and I get that. It's kind of like the DeLorean situation.
I still think
where
they should use OJ in the commercials for the new one.
I've thought of better ideas.
You can't do that.
But so that's my question is, there exist others, depending on how far back you go in time. Even if it's not in the 80s and 90s, you look at American cars from the 60s and 70s, 50s, you've got, the literally just labeled by its year and manufacturer, but I can say it and you'll know what it is. 57 Chevy.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a Chevy from 1957. It wasn't anything particularly special. It was, they made a dozen of them per every American adult, and they were everywhere, but they have become, because in that time frame, specifically that 57 Chevy had an iconic look, an iconic build, a motor in it that, struck a lot of people.
For what it was for the time, it was a very good car.
Right, so that's what I'm talking about, is in its time frame, people always go, that's a pretty good car. It's not going to be the best car. Notice these SLs, it's not like the bazillion $100,000+ S-classes that are turning into these classics. People,
right.
I'm sure people still own them. Probably they still like them. But the things that turn into these desirable, resale, desirable collector things are cars that often at the time are thought, well, this is pretty good. This is well put together. I like this car. And that's what holds the test of time. It's not striking above and beyond, because then you think that they should be something amazing, and that fades over time. But just really good, I think, can stay just really good without being, run over by the progress train.
Would a Miata be an example of that?
I think so.
Yeah. On a shorter time scale.
Yeah.
Here's a question though. Are any of the cars you described, are there any of them that were actually underappreciated at their time, or is part of what drives this legend the fact that there's always been a group of people who were very dedicated to this car for whatever reason? Maybe it's, even first-time buyers. Some guy in the 80s bought an SL for the first time with his Coke Flow money and actually went, wait, this is a nice car. You got to see this car. You got to get one of these.
I think that's always the case.
Yeah,
I think it has to be.
But I think in general, often, overall, I think it's more the first, if not, I hesitate to say underappreciated, because I think they are appropriately appreciated because,
by certain people.
Because they are just really good.
Mm-hmm.
They're not great. Like, for example, my dad's SL. I would love to buy one even. Like I said, I'm intrigued by the car. I like the car. It has its downsides. Like I said, it has a little bit of a locky transmission, and it's heavy. And it is.
Yeah.
It's a GT car, so it's designed to be heavy and comfortable, but it feels heavy.
It's also a convertible with a mechanical roof, an early one.
Right. So so there are downsides to these
cars.
And
a spring-loaded roll bar.
They are not the perfect car. And I think that's the important part. Is in their time they were never. This is a perfect car. It was people would say, hey, come look at my Mercedes. It's really nice.
Mm-hmm. It's pleasant.
Right. And I think a lot of people, would say that about their Miata. Hey, come check out my new Miata. It's pretty nice. And like,
true.
But that's the kind of thing that stands the test of time. Things can stay pretty nice. Things don't stay perfect.
That's a good point.
So that's where I'm going.
It's an interesting question. It makes me think a lot about the nature of car fandom, not necessarily liking cars in general, but liking a specific car, because is it the flame that burns twice as bright thing where
right.
Yes, there is a deep appreciation for old body style WRXs or old body style Evos.
The Toyota Supra.
Well, I know, but find one. Go find an Evo 8. Find one.
Okay.
Good luck. I'll see you in 10 years. Just bring me a copy of Forza. You'll do better that way.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That intense modders love destroys the cars.
Mm-hmm.
Even bug-eye WRXs are incredibly rare because they're all blown or crashed.
They're all blown or
both.
crashed, or if they have happened to fall into the hands of someone who can treat them well, they're never letting them go.
Right.
That's the third option.
Right.
Yeah, that's
right. I don't know. I think this is really interesting.
Have we actually answered the question?
No. But we've
babbled for a while.
Well, we circled around the fact that what I think is interesting, we did determine that for a car to have this kind of continuing transcendent appreciation where basically it's just a line that slowly goes up, but smoothly. Every generation has an appreciator. Every generation has a value objectively, and yet the cars themselves increase appropriately as the SL today is still different and better than the one from the 90s, but every car is good. And we did determine that you don't get that unless there is a community of people to say exactly that. This car is good.
Yeah, and keep reminding people of it. I think that's when you talk about time scales, you have to keep the car in mind long enough for it to come around again.
Yeah, exactly. Even if the nameplate disappears.
Right.
I don't know. It's not something that has a simple answer, but I think there's a little more clarity, at least for me.
Yeah, especially in the good versus great question. I think we answered that pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very interesting. I'm going to think about this some more.
I wonder what the listeners' answers are.
Yeah. Let's find out.
Let's find out.
You know what you got to do. You got to comment. You got to email.
Got to do all of it.
Got to tweet, DM, slide in our DMs.
It's easy.
Instagram. Hit us up on Instagram.
What the heck, yeah.
That's what kids are doing.
Send us a picture of your car that's good but not great.
Yeah, there you go. Send
good but not great, good but not great, but you love it.
Good but not great, but you love it. Send us those pictures.
This is just going to be pictures of Honda Accords. Honda Accord. That was what I should have mentioned.
Ding! Don't equate my dad's SL on a Honda Accord. I might need to reach over this table and end you.
You can't reach that far, and we know it.
I can walk around the table and end him. That's fine, too.
He could probably get away in that time frame. He could see that coming.
I'll stick the cat on him.
I could get away.
There you go.
Well, I actually want to see the SL. Y'all seen the SL? Nick, get us out of here. I want to see this thing.
All right.
Play us off. We want to go see the SL.
You have a lot of things, folks, to comment on. You got a lot of homework from this episode. Mm-hmm. We need to hear your thoughts on what should be done and not if... I'm not even going to say if anything, because what should be done with the Isle of Man TT.
Yep.
We need to know about what defines a classic car versus an old crappy car. And we need to know which truck should I buy.
That's, I think, the most important one, frankly.
Well, that's the only one we're actually putting a poll up for.
Yeah, right in Honda Accord.
So...
Shut up.
So, outside of the poll for my next vehicle, which will be up on the socials, you can really reach us. That'll be exclusively on there, but you can really reach us anywhere you want to reach us. Inbox at checkenginepodcast.com or each one of our names, Nick, Tristan, or Andrew, at checkenginepodcast.com if you want to reach one of us individually. If you go on to Facebook, you can look for Check Engine Podcast and you will find our page. Please like it. If you don't like it, that's cool, fine. Share it with someone else who may like it. And of course, comment, post on our wall, all of those types of things we want to hear from you. On Twitter and also on Instagram, we are at Check Engine Pod. No cast at the end because we ran out of space. So at Check Engine Pod. So please be a part of this discussion. If you don't want to discuss, you want to just listen, you can listen wherever they stream podcasts. Anchor.fm is our home base. Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Castbox, Breaker. .audio.
Yeah.
Is the new one. Thank you to the folks at Breaker.audio for picking us up. We appreciate that. And of course, you can find links to all of it through checkenginepodcast.com.
And read our blogs. Nick's had a hot one this week.
And yeah, the blogs are up on checkenginepodcast.com.
Or maybe last week. Doesn't matter. Go read the blogs.
Just read the blogs. They're there. They're all there, no matter when we put them up. Do we have any thank yous before we take off?
I want to thank Tristan's Deep Thoughts, TM, even though I gave him a ton of shit for that nonsense in the previous episode.
It came in handy today.
Tristan?
While we're in the process of thanking each other, I would like to thank Andrew for maintaining a document of episode ideas. We were
Yes, well done, sir.
I need
kind
to
of
update that.
we had a bunch that we could choose from, but having a place to look through them made this episode possible today. So
My pleasure.
Running that is a big job. We got a lot of ideas floating around, so it's good to have.
Andrew is the creative director of the show, I think.
Director.
So
Promotion. I've just been billing myself as a writer.
yeah, he's
Yep.
he is writer, creative director. He kind of provides the framework that Tristan and I operate, and that is a big task. So thanks, Andrew.
Nick, our marketing and technical advisor.
Mm-hmm. And host.
And technical. Okay. What I would like to thank. This is very general, but I'm just going to thank life today.
The cereal?
No,
Okay, good.
what we're experiencing.
That's kind
You
of
know
gross.
they're making it in cinnamon now.
Yeah.
And, well, cinnamon's the OG, but vanilla is really good.
I'm not sure, but I'll try it.
Vanilla, well,
Ugh.
it's really good.
I don't know. I like vanilla flavor stuff. I might have to try it.
It's good
Anyway,
milk.
I need to thank life because outside of the podcast, there's been a lot of good stuff, a lot of big news happening for pretty much all of us here in the show.
Big tings.
Big things going on for Andrew and his wife. Tristan had a big announcement. We're not going to dive too much into personal details on the podcast, but life in general has been treating us and the podcast very well lately.
Yeah.
So
Things are going well.
I'm just very appreciative of all of that. And of course, one of the reasons the podcast is going well is because of you guys, the listeners. So we thank you as always. Because even if we suck, which may be more often than not, you guys are always awesome. So we cannot wait to hear from you. We cannot wait to record more of these for you. Keep tuning in. Keep supporting us. We really appreciate you. Thank you very much. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.